how do you process the exact moment your world goes up in flames? Where do you begin when everything is reduced to ash? To the people living in Jerusalem in the year 586 BCE, the city felt invulnerable. The sacred temple at its center served as the literal home of God on earth. They believed that as long as they remained within those massive stone walls, no enemy could ever touch them. Then, the Babylonian Empire arrived. After a brutal siege, the army breached those defenses. They burned the city and dragged the survivors into exile. The survivors lost more than a war. They lost the foundation of their identity. If God had allowed his own home to be destroyed, it meant they were either entirely alone or being actively targeted by the deity they trusted to protect them. We have access to the eyewitness accounts of this collapse through the Book of Lamentations. These poems were composed by someone standing in the smoking rubble of their home, documenting the shock as it happened. The existence of this text highlights a survival mechanism used in the face of total chaos. When the world feels like it's falling apart, we reach for a pen to try and give it a structure we can understand. The writer forced the disaster into a very specific shape. The first 4 chapters of the book are written as strict alphabetical poems. In chapters 1, 2, and 4, the rules are rigid. There are exactly 22 verses in each chapter, matching the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The first line begins with the first letter, the second line begins with the second letter, and the pattern continues all the way to the end. Imposing a mathematical grid on a bloody catastrophe serves a practical purpose. When your external world is entirely out of your control, the brain craves an internal sense of order. By wrapping their grief in the alphabet, the author attempted to capture the full scope of the community's pain, quite literally from A to Z, to ensure no part of their suffering went unrecorded. To capture a disaster this big, the text cycles through different voices. Think of it like a concept album with different speakers, where each person describes a different facet of the trauma. First, there is the narrator. He starts as a detached observer, reporting on the ruined streets and desolate gates. But as he sees the starving children in the rubble, his clinical tone breaks down into weeping. Then we hear from daughter Zion. She is the city of Jerusalem personified as a fierce, violated woman. She refuses to be silent, demanding that everyone passing by, and God himself, turn and look at what she has endured. By using these different perspectives, the text validates every reaction to tragedy. Whether you are numb, observational, or raging with anger, the book suggests that all of these are legitimate ways to process loss. All of this builds towards the center of the book, where we meet a figure called the suffering man. He represents the survivor who has hit absolute rock bottom, describing a life of physical pain and deep isolation. Look what happens to the alphabetical code here. It intensifies. Instead of 22 verses, the chapter expands to 66. The alphabet repeats 3 times per letter, AAA, BBB, creating a massive wall of text. This suffocating structure mirrors the character's mental state. He is trapped, recounting the feeling of being hunted and abandoned by his own God. Right at this darkest midpoint, the voice shifts. Instead of looking at the debris, the suffering man turns towards his memory, stating that God's mercies never cease. They are new every morning. The author placed this moment of hope inside the most restricted, suffocating part of the poetry. It suggests that finding a way forward doesn't require ignoring the tragedy. It often happens while sitting in the deepest part of the darkness. But look at the final poem in chapter 5. The alphabetical code is completely gone. There are still exactly 22 lines, but the letters no longer follow an order. The structure dissolves because a moment of hope didn't magically fix the world. The final chapter is a raw, unresolved plea. The city is still ruined, and the people are still searching for a way home. Lamentations suggests that crying, being angry, and feeling broken are all valid ways to survive. Even when we are working through our darkest A to Z moments, the poetry reminds us that the morning is still coming.